Okay, so we're online. So for everyone who doesn't know me, my name's Amy Lupo. I'm one of the clinical leads with the project. I'm hoping most of you have seen me around the parts. You know, I'll have a chat to pretty much anyone, and you can't get me to shut up, so I'm sure you've probably met me in your travels. So I do look after the Change Champions together with the rest of our team, Dave McCann up the back, and we've got Nikki as well, and Nikki's one of our new CNs that's actually from Logan, and she's going to actually do a bit of presenting today as well, which is a bit exciting. So I just thought, again, reiterating the Change Champion Metro South site. I know I've gone over this the last two sessions, but again, very important. This is where you're going to find all your information for Change Champions. So does everyone know where Metro South? Hopefully by now you've all had a chance to go on and have a look. Yeah. So Change Champions have their own page under support. And then everything, all the materials that I use or the team use, we'll upload them here. Okay, you'll notice there's a new button, which is exciting. The FirstNet breakout sessions, which I might actually get changed to emergencies because sometimes people don't know what FirstNet is, but that's the emergency breakout session. So remember when I said right at the start that all these sessions, they're focusing on power chart and all those, some of the fundamentals of power chart that I expect you to be asked come go live. And you will, majority of the questions will be around power chart, but there are some of those other modules that we went through last week. Remember we looked at the SurgiNet module, which is our theatres, we looked at ED. So there are some tips and tricks that we want those particular Change Champions to know as well. So we are looking at doing breakout sessions for those particular groups. So this will get bigger. It's just because our project teams are really swamped at the moment and getting, they've got a lot of work to get through. But as we get closer to go live, which isn't a bad idea anyway, because I'd like to focus on our power chart fundamentals first. And then as we get closer to go live, you may see, and I'll send comms out as well as they come out, you may see some maternity. There may be a maternity, couple of sessions for the Change Champions from maternity, pharmacy, allied health, etc., based on the requirement. Okay, so stay tuned. Do keep checking this. The other the other things that live in here are all your toolbox talks. So hopefully you all grabbed your toolbox talk for this week. And if you haven't seen them before, if this is your first session, that's cool. Welcome. But they are essentially your take-homes, and they're to reiterate everything that I've gone through in the sessions. So on those toolbox talks, I do have your key points. So they're really important because they're the key messaging I want you to take home, because they're the things that maybe that's a lesson learnt that we learnt the hard way at PA, that this is something that sometimes the clinicians struggled with come go live. So the way we do that is that we saturate you guys with that information and that messaging, so when you get out there and you're talking to colleagues, they're those things that I really want you to remember. So if nothing else from the session, I want you to remember those key points that are on your toolbox talks. So we always pick out about 3. Okay. The other thing we also put on there, the discussion questions. So they're questions that we expect you to be asked come go live. So, you know, can I customize this? Where do I find that? We'll put the most common ones on that toolbox talk just to prompt you when you get your colleagues asking you some questions. If I'm feeling really generous, I chuck in some screenshots as well just to help you to put some context around it. And then lastly, we have the practice activities. So this is really, these forums are really where you become Change Champions. You've had your training. It's overwhelming. And a lot of it is the same as what everyone else will get. But you guys get it earlier so we can start saturating you guys with all that extra information. Because if we did that in an instructor-led training session, you'd be there forever, which we know we can't do, which is why we need you to come to these forums and take on all the resources we give you, do the practice activities. That leads me to my next point. I promised you all logins for the train domain. Wait a minute. Yeah, it's not as bad as you think. They are coming. So what we did is we did actually a refresh of our train domain. So we'd have to keep updating it because things keep changing in the production, the live system. So we did another refresh of our train domain. What that means is that we now need all new logins and all new patients. And our Change Champion network's quite big. I am working on it. I said I'd have them today. I'm still hoping for this week. It just won't be today. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to email them out. I think will be the easiest way. So do stay tuned for your emails. So if you did not receive an appointment for today's Change Champ, it means you're not on our email list, which means somehow we've missed you. So can you maybe just pop up the back and see Dave before you leave, and we'll take your names, just because that's where we'll send out some of those logins. Okay, so those logins then you'll be able to, because we want them to be blank patients, and there are a lot of patients in the train domain, and some of them are used for proficiencies, so we can't have, you know, we don't want people playing on some of those patients when someone's getting tested on it, you know, so that would be a little bit cruel. So we're making you all your own patients, so you can do whatever you want. All right, I promise it is coming we're going to keep plugging away at the people we need to get that happening. So, any questions before we move into today's session? So we're covering documentation today. You can expect a lot of questions around documentation come go live. It's our bread and butter. Last week we did the views. Just to recap, I don't think there'll be too many questions because it was quite a full-on session where I just really wanted to show you all the different views of the system. And the idea was so you can all see how each of your roles and the things that you do within your role in the system interacts with someone else's. So, you know, if I place a consult order to Allied Health, what does that look like on their end? That type of thing. Because it gives you a greater understanding of how the system works. So there isn't too much to recap. Probably the biggest thing I do want to point out is that My Experience user console. That's probably your biggest thing from last week. So this is where it allows you to swap between roles. Okay, so particularly for your bank nurses, where you're working on the wards and ED, you would be flicking between these roles so you have access to some of those other views. Most roles have it. Doctors, Allied Health, you all have varying roles that you can flick between. Okay, so we covered that last week. If you missed last week's session, you're right. Sorry, now I call you out in front of everyone. We need aspiration. Now I've lost the train of thought. What was I going to say? Anyway, we've got it. Oh, that's what I was going to say. The video. Last week, remember, I had some issues with this fancy contraption. I taped the Bow Desert session instead, and we are getting that. Only happened late last week, so I will have that up hopefully by this afternoon, so you can watch it if you weren't here for last week's session. Cool. That's probably all I needed to go through, unless anyone has any questions from last session or anything about Change Champions. Yes? That's all right. They are. Yes, so we put them up after every session. Let me jump back in. So we'll put up, and if we use anything else like PowerPoints or anything else, so you'll come into support and you'll jump into your Change Champion folder. Now your schedules are up here, so if you want to know what topics are coming up, and then you'll go into your Toolbox Talks. Oh, that is where it takes you. It's all changed. It looks a little bit different, but that's them there. So if you selected the one from last week, it will open up to something similar to what you have in your hand, which is session 3. I'm going a little bit slow today. Anyway, they look exactly like what you've got in your hand. So you'll find all the previous session Toolbox Talks, there we go, finally, on there as well. Any other questions before I hand over to Nikki to have her debut and presenting? So Nikki can take the floor. I'll jump into the patient for you.
Okay, hello everyone, my name's Nikki. So bear with me, this is my first live appearance, so I'm hoping it'll go well. So what I want to show you today is just about our documentation. So documentation, as everyone's aware, is one of the most important things and critical things that we do within our roles. It's stuff that we can pass over to other people and stuff that can take us to court or out of court. So it's really, really important that we get it done and get it done right. Now, the only way that you can add documentation is via this menu list down the side here. So you have a documentation key, and to add documentation you hit add. I know, easy, right? I've been doing this for days now and I'm like, oh. So now the first thing that comes up is it's a new note. So you will also see just here, new note and list. The list is actually a list of previous documents or previous notes that have been written. Does anyone see one that they think might be mine that I've put on there earlier? I'll give you a clue. It's this one, dead. So yeah, no, it's really, really tough. But when I'm saying this, I'm also talking about this subject. So when we write a note, we like to have a subject. That subject will come up as a title over here. Okay, so just hold that thought for a moment. Now, when we're going to type in a note, we'll see that the first thing is position. the note type filter. So I like to select all. We can actually personalize which notes will be our favorites. We're not going to go into that right now. I just want to get a basic note. So this note type filter gives us all the notes that are available, all the kind of templates that we can access. We highly recommend that you use templates, which are over here. The reason why we highly recommend that you use the templates is it will draw information from our power chart directly into our note that we are creating, our document that we are creating. If we don't, we still have the access that we can free type and write whatever we like. However, there is a higher chance that we will make errors, and we want to really avoid that. So we totally recommend using a template. So from our all filter, I'm going to go into a type. This allows us to choose what kind of document we want to write. So I come from a nursing background in ED, so the majority of the form that I will use will be a progress note. So depending on where you work, you might want to choose something else. So, but I'm going to give you a bit of an idea here. Outpatient pediatric medicine. All right, great. So we're going to use that kind of note. From here, we're going to choose our template because I wanted to draw in that information from the power chart. So I don't have to, you know, reinvent the wheel. What's the point of double typing, I say? We don't actually use power forms, no. Yeah. So if we do a... Oh, sorry, Amy?
Power forms. You're thinking of power note.
Oh, I am.
But I'll show you power forms after. But that's not what that template is. No, the template's really just for your typing. So
if we go into admission note pediatric, and down the bottom we have a little OK. That's going to put our document in. But before we do, I want to change this title. If I don't change that title, when I go back into my list, I'm going to see these titles that are all the same. They're all going to read admission note pediatric. So we have a business plan that we've got to stick to, a business note. And what we always write every single time in our title is the reason why we're writing the note, the type or the type of place that we're at, the role that we are playing, department or area that we're working in, team. I wrote type in there. Sorry, it's my errors. And role. So reason, team, role. So, for example, in this title, oh, it's a mouse right next to me. We might write the reason is, let me think. What's a reason? Let me think. Yeah, AM shift. We work in CIU, and I'm an RN. So that's giving quite a clear subject as to what we're going to follow up. Okay, so we're doing our admission note pediatric, and we're going to hit OK. This is going to create our document. Okay, so we're going to fill in whichever parts are applicable to us, whichever parts are relevant to us. But you can see here, although this is a child, I would expect not them to be pregnant. But this is the information that it's pulled from our power chart. So it's the current history, the notes that they have as an inpatient, allergies. And we can adjust any of those, and we can change any of those. So if we were going to put in AM shift, let's give a bit of a birth history. See, when I sort of tabbed close to that birth history, there was nothing there, but then this little box came up around it. You need to make sure that that's open because that's the only place you'll be able to type. Otherwise, you'll just be doing nothing. Okay, so you type in whatever it is that you want to write. Simple. Now, we also have options down here, sign, submit, or save. We will always tell you to sign and submit. The reason being is that if you just save, it's like writing a half-written note. The problem with that half-written note is that anybody else can go in there and change your note. Okay, they can delete it. So we don't want you to use the save. We would really prefer that you use the sign and submit. That ensures that you've got a finalized document that nobody else can edit your original document from or delete your document. Okay, so the main takeaway point is there, sign and submit. However, on saying that, if you don't finish typing your note, you can save it, you can come back to it later, but you just need to be aware that everyone can see what your note is, and they can see it and they can change it or modify it. So just keep that in the back of your mind as well. Is that clear to everyone?
They can't sign it on your behalf.
They cannot sign it on your behalf. No. Okay.
Just on that note, sorry, Nikki.
Yeah.
The other thing is we say to be cautious with the saving as well, is because when you go, like as Nikki said, it is available in the chart, so anyone can see it. And if you've got like some actions there that you as a doctor have maybe gone and said, I want these blood tests taken, and then you're like saved it because you're like, oh, I'll just check with the consultant, and the consultant's like, oh, actually don't do those tests. Those actions are available for other clinicians to see, and while it says that this note is in progress, there is still the risk that they may act on that, which hopefully would be mitigated with them using their communication to tell you that actually these are the tests I need. But this is why we say to sign and submit rather than saving, because, or if you're going to save, just be aware that other people can see that documentation from the moment you save that document. Yes, it can cause confusion, and there's only so much you can mark it before, things do happen, someone may act upon that. So we need to stress that. We try and stress that in training, and again, you, as all of our super users and change champions, we want to stress that as well with you guys. So where possible, sign and submit. You can always do an addendum. So if you're not finished it, write where you're up to, finalise it, and then you can always go in and add another addendum down the bottom, which Nikki's going to show you how to do. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Cool. So the takeaway note from there, sign, submit. Yeah? Excellent. So we're going to sign and submit it now. So this screen here gives us another option that if we need to change our date, our time, or our title, we can do that there. You cannot change your author. Which reminds me, I'll have to come back to it. But you don't actually need to write your name into your documents. Down the bottom, can I go back to that, Amy? Can I just close it out? Yeah. See down the bottom here? This is your electronic signature. This comes on every document that you come into. So this enables people to see who wrote the note, what time they did it, and the date they did it. So there's no actual physical reason why you need to type your name in, because it will all be digitally saved. Does that make sense? Yeah? Cool. All right, so just going back again, sign, submit. This is our checking screen. We can change the time, we can change our title, and we can change the date. If we're happy with that, we sign it. This document will then come onto our list, and it's the one up the top. Now, can anyone see any reason or know that there's anything different as opposed to the rest of the notes? Yeah, it's italic. So the reason why it's still italics is because we haven't refreshed our screen. Most important key, I reckon, refresh. So once we refresh, it's non-italic anymore, and it means that it's good to go. All right, so is everyone sort of clear on documentation, on adding a document at least? It's quite simple. Documentation, add, you choose your title, you choose your subject, you choose your template, we add it.
You're in somebody else's login and you
Yes.
advise.
Yep.
You don't need to give a password to submit the document.
No.
I think there is a risk that
Yep.
you will assign your name, somebody else's name to your documentation.
There's a very real risk that you can put the wrong documentation into the wrong patient. So we do have a way in that we can delete that document. It's called in error, and we'll go through that in a second. I guess the delay on that is that you can only in error your documents that you've created. You cannot in error anybody else's or delete anybody else's errors.
I would say to mitigate that risk, we have rapid access. So we've got, with your scope coming for November, has everyone heard of rapid access? Yeah, so it's a little tap on, tap off. So as soon as you go to a device and you're going to do anything on that device, you want to be tapping on, even if you're like, oh, I'm not sure if I was using this one. It does have a lockout, like a timeout as well, so hopefully if you've walked away from it for longer than 10 minutes, it will lock itself down. So when you come back, you're going to have to tap on, and that's how that safety aspect that it notices you. So anytime you're using a device, it's already open, and you're not sure if you were the last one or something wrong, tap on. Everyone in the acute setting where your patient care devices, actually even in the consult rooms we have rapid access. If you want to know more, I would ask your line managers, because they've done a whole lot of scoping around rolling out the rapid access, and it just works from your cards. So your card that you have for Logan or Metro South will that's what it recognises, taps on with your mobile. Just on that note, with your rapid access, do I get into this now? Yeah. So most of your devices have generic, particularly in the ward areas, they're generic logins into most of your computer stations. Or if they weren't, they will be soon when we go live. And then you'll use tap on, and you're almost like a visitor to that device. Okay. What that means is that anytime you go into anything else, like OzLab, OA, it automatically signs you in as well because you've tapped on. Which is great. It's really nifty, and it saves you a lot of time. Because it just jumps straight into, so when you get into Power Chart and the blue little box comes up, it just automatically pre-fills all your information, so you don't have to type anything, which is great. But then there are also safety aspects around that, so when you're finished, you need to make sure you tap off or you log out of your browsers. So if you're in your emails, you need to log out of your emails, okay? Because you're still visiting, so someone else may see that. That will all come. We'll probably, hopefully, we'll do a bit of a session on devices, which would be kind of cool. I reckon if we could get something set up, that'd be kind of cool. We could show you some of the ins and outs, but just so you know what rapid access, if we talk about it again, that's what we're talking about. Yes?
Can I just ask with that, if someone is doing a progress note, is there an auto-save function? If someone comes and taps on it, you've just written a note, are you going to lose all of that?
No. Yeah.
The question is if we have, if there's an autosave when we're correcting or when we're writing up a document, if we have to tap on and tap off in the meantime. And the answer.
Think about the fact that I'm answering over here. This is going to be nice and cozy. The answer is no. Unfortunately, there's no auto-save. So if you're in the middle of writing a note, you need to stay at that device. And if you're going to walk away, you need to sign and submit. Or if you're going to save it, you can do that as well, as long as you come back straight after and you finalise it when you finish. You know, the main point would be to make sure that if you're in the middle of doing something in documentation, which really should be current practice, that you continue and you finish right to the end of that documentation and you save it. So there's no risk that someone can come along and, you know, start documenting. Thank you.
Okay. Has anyone got any other questions before we move along? Yep. Awesome.
Sorry. I like using progress notes blank.
Yep.
Yep.
I don't use the template.
Yep, that's a good point. So nurses in the room will tend to use the blank progress note, and that's really because we have a general rule, which is you only document by exception. So because this is an electronic chart and we have devices now that should be, you know, at the centre with your patient, so you're doing your documentation with your patient beside you, they're always the focus, then you will be documenting as you go. So there is no need to wait to the end of the shift, which has been a notorious nursing practice, that we all used to wait and then we hoard our charts and write our notes, and they pretty much say what we've already documented anyway. There is no need in an electronic chart. It's time-stamped exactly to the time, down to the second that you documented, you know, a vital sign or anything, which is why we say only by exception. So if something happened, like the patient developed chest pain, and there might not be, you want to write some extra information about that, which is fair. You know, there's something, other information that may not be captured just in iView standalone. So iView is where the nurses are mainly doing a lot of their assessments. Then you would be writing a note. That's the exception we're talking about. But if it's a standard shift, nothing's crazy's happened, and you've documented everything you've done in all the other available places, then there is no need to go and write a blank progress note for nothing. So that's why I would say exception.
Well, I noticed in there somewhere when I was looking around that there's a handover, so like from recovery back to the ward, that handover. So will that then go straight into the progress notes or into the documentation if we use that little tool?
Template.
Yes. So if you use the template, if you jump back into documentation for me, Nikki, so the question was just around the SBAR clinical handover. And if you go add for me, you would have seen, very keen eyes there, there is a SBAR clinical handover. So you could use it for that if you wanted to. Yes, Ursula, you're right on the money, which is where I'm leading.
That's the one I'm talking about.
Get up here, come on. So this one is the template. So this is the note form of it. So if you've done a handover for some other, maybe it's doctor to doctor, or maybe it's like a, I don't know, retrieval or something when they do their handover.
Recovery, and then you have to come back to the ward because you would have to go in this way and go, well, I returned to ward at such and such a time from post-black cough.
Yes.
When you go into that interactive view, and then it gives you a template where you fill in the spaces and it automatically generates the form, which would be easier than writing the thing in the first place.
Yes. So where possible, that's why we encourage with nurses to use iView. And so there's no need to do the other one if you do it from your iView section, which is clinical handover. So if you go to nursing handover communication, I mean, we'll get into this when we do iView, which I think is next session, I believe. But just classic nurses in the room. I'm one of them, so I'm allowed to say that. Yes, you probably have more information
I think that
there.
would be easier because it's got
Absolutely.
Who
Yeah.
handed over, what time,
Yeah.
who was the current patient,
Yeah.
And where were they going to, like from theatre to H.
Exactly. So that clinical handover template could be used by other clinicians. So it's just up to you. If there's somewhere else, particularly with nurses, most of you should find that your information is in iView, which is why we say document by exception. Some of the other clinicians will rely a lot on those templates and those notes because that's where they do most of theirs. They don't have the fancy iView.
Just by confirming, does that then transfer into your progress note?
No.
Write your progress
No,
notes?
no. So that will not pull in.
How are nurses, so like if we're receiving from medical, so Jen and I were talking about that the other day, if a medical person is giving a handover to someone and the rehab nurse is writing in that this handover's been received, how do we draw people's attention to that note then if it doesn't
Go into the documentation.
Right. So the question's just around the nursing communication in iView. If it doesn't pull into notes, how will they flag that to other people to be seen? Is that what we're saying? It would be exactly the same. So you could either flag, you could flag that iView, so you know how to flag, and I won't get into that now because it's not applicable for everyone, but we'll cover that in iView session. But you can flag things so it shows up on the patient summary page and it draws their attention to. So for example, it might be the blood pressure was low and you want to remind yourself that you need to pen that over. You could flag that blood pressure and so then it's prompting you. So I would probably recommend something along those lines. But I can discuss that with you guys for that workflow after the session if you like and show you what I would recommend. Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so we're just going to move back on to our documentation. So when we click on our document, you'll find here that it comes up on the right-hand side as a final report. Now, if we want to modify our document, say we've gone through and we've realised that we've forgotten to do something, there's two ways in which you can do it. The first is up here in our little toolbar here, and the second, although it wasn't working for me earlier, is a right-click onto the document. Usually once you right-click onto that, it'll bring up like a little side menu, and you can choose Modify. Because it's not working, we're just going to hit Modify up here. So again, it's got our electronic signature already on there, so we don't need to put our name. And we can put in, see it's here, it's got Insert Addendum here. That's where we're going to put our notes. So we'll put whatever note it is that we've forgotten. We're going to sign and submit. And then when we have a look over here to the right, our document comes up with its containing addenda. The important thing to note when we modify the document is that the last note or the last addendum that was written will be in the top. So if we were to scroll down on that document, you'll see that the initial notes that I made are further down. So the most recent change to the document will be at the top of that document. Does that make sense? Excellent. So now I'm going to come to where we've made an error. So we actually want to delete that. Like anything, on a paper record, if we've made an error, we simply put a line through it and sign it. But it's always in that documentation. With making this in error, it will always be there. It will always be part of the record. However, it will come up like this. So again, we click on our tool bar up there. We need to put in a reason as to why. And maybe it was the wrong patient. So we put our reason in, we hit OK, and it makes certain that we want to make that decision, and we hit yes, and then it comes up as an in-error report. You can no longer make any changes to that report, and that's how it will show, and it'll be there forever. So what we've done is we've gone over how to add a document, how to modify a document, how to create an in-error document. Forward. Great. Okay. So the other thing that we will use is the forward note. So we use a forward note when we want a note or a document to go to a specific person, and it could be from a resident to the consultant to review and to modify. It could be from a grad nurse to their supervising nurse to make sure that their documentation's good. It could be from an outpatient appointment to their GP, you know, ED to the fracture. So it's to go to anyone specific. Okay. Whoopsies. I'm trying to pick a one that I haven't deleted. Okay, so say we select this document. Again, you can use your right click and forward, but that's not working. So just up the top here, we have our forward little creation. going to sign it. So again, a yellow box means that it's compulsory. We need to fill that out.
So that little message that popped up before, that was saying that warning, this is only a saved document, it's unsigned. So it's just giving you that warning, so you're going to forward that on just so you're aware that it hasn't finished that note.
Okay, so our forward action is two options, to sign it or to review it. Signing is when you want someone to have a look and submit what you've done, to agree with what you've done. Review is to make sure that it's okay. So, sorry Amy, can you clear that up a bit?
You probably use when you're co-signing documentation. So you all of the student documentation, they generally use the sign because you need to co-sign it to supervise that documentation. Review is more where you'll literally use it to review a documentation. So our medical teams use that a little bit more for, you know, this is the management plan I'm thinking, and they might forward it to the consultant and say, this is what you said in the rounds, are you happy with this? So they're the two different ways you can use it.
So I'm just going to choose sign, and then it's requesting a person. You can either pop a name in, you can type yourself what name you'd like to go in, or you can use the binoculars. And this is choosing who you want this document to be forwarded to. So I'm just going to use...
If you do LG underscore, then I'll show you where it comes
Yeah.
up.
Was it...
LG underscore...
Was it DR...
and do 1.
Excellent. So we'll add him, and we hit OK. So that will self-populate. Now, if you wanted to write any notes on here, you could. It might be, you know, the patient's changed their medication, or for whatever reason you want to write a little note, that or something that you want to draw their attention to. That's your opportunity to write it in there. Once you hit OK, that will forward it on to the doctor, and he will actually come up with a little thing that Amy's going to show you. What's that in?
Oh, that's it. Nikki did very well. Oh,
Sorry, questions?
So if something needs so co-signed, do they still sign and submit, or they have to just they can still sign
They
and
can
submit?
still sign and submit and still forward it.
Yep.
For particularly the student workload, it varies depending what the specialty is in terms of the business rule. And I can't remember exactly what the different ones are, not even for student, which is weird because that's what I worked on. But I might follow up with that one and let you know. Or cover student, if everyone's interested in students. It's very cool actually to see how it works, looking at their vital signs and how you endorse those results. We might cover that one week. If that's, yeah, then I'll do so, make sure that Logan, the business rules we're using are the same. Nikki, well done. Nikki's first one. Give her a round of applause. She's only been with us for a little while, so she did very well. So, I am going to change over to a doctor, and if we're lucky, we are using a mock domain as usual, but if we're lucky, that is going to work for us, and you can see how that appears as the forward document. Okay, so I've logged in as a doctor. So forwarded documentation will appear in the message center, in their message center. So up the top on your toolbar, you have your message center. This is also where any other results will come to for our medical teams, or where any other medications that need a cosign, like your phone orders, for example. When the nurses say, this is a phone order and I need a cosign, it'll appear here as well. So it'll populate down the side. It also pulls in any of your saved documents, so documents that you've saved that you haven't yet finalised, okay? Whoop, that's a long way down. Okay. Documentation, forwarded documents, so it's worked lovely. If I open that one up, it tells you what the documentation that's been entered, and you can review that information there. And then there's the two actions down the bottom. Sign, which obviously is just quite easy, and you say OK, next. The other one is refuse. If you do select refuse, you're going to have to put in a reason. Maybe they sent it to the wrong team. Maybe this isn't your patient, you have no idea what this note's about, so maybe you'd say refuse, I don't follow this patient. And you're also going to have to put in to send a clinician's name to send it back to. Because you can't just say refuse and then nothing happens to the note, because it'll just sit there and someone thinks it's all been sorted. So you do have to enter in a clinician's name for it to go back to. But in most circumstances, I would hope you've got the right one. You can forward on further. You could do a bit of a chain. If you were like, not me, but the other residents looking after this patient, which we know they like to do, you kind of just hop along all of them. They could forward that on as well. But it would just be a next. It then brings up the next documentation. So if they have a lot of documents in there, they can just go through their list quickly and start endorsing things. But to be honest, the forwarding doesn't happen that often. I mean, the functionality is there, but I can't say I've seen it used too much. Mainly for student nurses or nurses in other roles, as well as the team's reviews. That's probably where it gets used. But it's just so you know, you can see how the forward works. Now, I'm going to show you now some customization. Okay, so when you saw Nikki doing this note, you would have seen this note type. To be honest, the note type is really more important in the back end because it's just the way we group notes in order for them to be filed into the chart. Okay, so it is important that you do choose the right note type, but as you can see, there's a ridiculous amount. So we have all the outpatient clinics by their location and their clinic in there, so they can select their note type. So what you can actually do is you can filter that out. So if I went up to Edit, View, Customize, this is all the types that appear there, and you can just drag across to the ones that you just want to see. Okay, because it's kind of annoying when you have to keep scrolling down and looking for them. So maybe I want to see legal as well. Sure, and we'll see dermatology. I'll say OK. And then up the top here, you have this note type list filter. It's currently showing all. You want to show personal. And your personal list is just those couple that we did before. Okay, so if you have, you're only working in some clinics and every time you're having to filter through, especially if you're down the bottom of the list, it's kind of annoying because you have to scroll every time. Do one of those filters onto it and then you're fine and you can just have your couple of notes. Templates are even simpler, and you've probably worked it out if you're tech savvy. The stars on the side, if you just highlight the stars and then change it from all to your favorites, it's just going to take out the rest of them, so there's only those 8 there. Makes sense? That one's pretty easy. So, but as Nikki said, we do encourage your templates really because they pull in information. And so for example, your clinic notes and things, this is probably been one of the harder ones to encourage use of. These are all getting optimized, by the way. There's lots of work going into the templates to make them more usable for our Metro South sites. But your clinic note, for example, you would have seen it brought in your home medications. Normally they write in the clinics, and if there's any people that work in the clinics here now, you probably can attest this, you probably write some home meds anyway in the review you're doing. Obviously there's transcription errors that could happen, and there is no point in double documenting. So we have somewhere in the chart where you document home meds, and a lot better than what you would on a free text. If you've seen some of the entries we've seen in free text documentation, it's not always quite clear or accurate. So you would be documenting it here, you document it up here in document meds, and we'll cover this another week, it'll pull into your chart. Okay, which is why we stress the templates. They are getting, like I said, optimized to be better. But if one of those templates doesn't quite fit what you're trying to do, just choose the blank one. That's fine, but just know nothing's going to pull in. Okay? That's that. Let's talk auto text. Any questions first before we move on from that customization? There's there in your quick reference guide. Did anyone not get a booklet the other week? We did a top 30 quick reference guide booklets. Has anyone not got one? Couple. So we have a couple here today. I think we've got another 12 or so here. Oh, we only have one left. Oh, okay. Well, I will get them to you. It's actually okay because we didn't get a stationery order, so they're not bound in a nice, and I'm a little bit anal and like it all pretty. So apologies for everyone who got the bulldog clip. If you don't want it, you can put it back and we'll bind them all for you and bring them next week. I would if it was me, but I'm a little bit pedantic. So maybe if we can get the names of the people who don't have books, because we're obviously not going to keep creating books, but maybe if we do a couple more, just a couple more for our friends at the back there. My team hates me when I'm like, let's do a couple more. Okay, auto text. Do people know about auto text? I know they do train it a little bit in your training sessions. They do maybe a signature. Have people seen auto text? Or we got some people who have no idea what I'm talking about, which is even cooler because then you'll all be like, ooh, and I'll just claim that. Okay, let's go into a blank. So these ones are all system-built templates, okay? You can't change them, you can't modify them. You can change them in the sense of once you've opened that template, you can, delete out headings that you don't want, but you can't save that so every time you open that template, it's always going to be the same. You can't do that. You can't modify these. So we have what we call auto text. And so if I brought up this blank note, I'll show you an example. There are some that are already populated in the background as well. They're also, the system have created some for you, but I'll show you how you do your own. There's a little symbol by the name of an accent grave. Don't quote me on that, although now I've been recorded saying that. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. It's that squiggly thing next to the 1 on your keyboard. If you hit that one, that's like our shortcut key, you get a little list of auto texts that have already been created. Every user, regardless of where you work, you'll have these. If I chose one of these, let's choose case management. It brings you up a little template, okay? So they've done a couple of the common ones there, but you can also create these for yourself. So this is particularly useful in your outpatient clinics, or if you're a case manager and you go around, you always write the same thing. These become quite handy. Or if you're in an outpatient area and you've been used to writing a form, and now that form, you know, we could look at getting it scanned, or maybe you want to do it in an auto text. A lot of our clinics have taken on auto text. So this little button here, and if I hover over it, it says Manage Auto Text. This is all the ones that we just saw before by using that shortcut key that are already there, but you can create new ones. So up the top, and there's a quick reference guide on this as well, don't worry. I don't expect you to remember all this. There's a new phrase, so we add a new one. In the abbreviation is where you put what your shortcut key is. And a little tip is if you use capitals, it jumps to the top of that list. So if I used AL, for example, in capitals, it'll always jump to the top. And maybe, I don't know, let's do like a derm review or something. So that's the name of what the auto text is going to be. And then this button here, the A, this is where I'm going to add the text. Now, if you wanted to, you can actually manually write it. So you could come in and do your, okay, well, we always write the same headings, review. You can bold them and underline them. And then it might be, I don't know, something along those lines. Now, you do have to convert it over. It's a techie thing. I don't know why, but you just have to, or else it doesn't work. So you just need to convert it down. It needs to be in both of those windows. Okay, there's probably a really legit reason that Dave probably knows. I don't know. Anyway, but just do it in both. So you just convert it down. You say OK, and you say save. We close that. When you hit it, my little AL's right up the top because I use capitals. And then it pulls that in for you. Now, you can actually do up things in Word. So if you've got a whole team, the big catch of this is that it's per user. So if you've got a whole team, they all want to use in your, they go, okay, well, I'd like my whole team to be using that same standardized documentation format. The issue is that everyone would then have to set that up, okay, because it's per user. But you can make this quicker by doing it in Word first. So you could do it up in Word with all the headings that you like, and then it's just a matter of everyone Control-C and Control-V straight into, so copy and paste straight into that window. It's the quickest way to do it. So a lot of our clinics in previous sites, so for example at the PA, it was part of the starter. So if they had a new rotation come in, it would be like, this doctor likes this documentation written this way, so you need to copy and paste when you come in, and it's saved on their desktops. So I'll just show you so you know I'm not telling a lie with Word. It's pretty cool. Tables do work. Radio dial, like if you have tick boxes and stuff on forms, or you're trying to replicate something, there are limitations with auto text. So you can't do check boxes, bullet points aren't great. So it is very simplistic text that will work. I'll show you a table and what that looks like. Let's insert. Let's go again. What do I have? Let's just do that. Let's chuck a little bold on it because we're feeling daring. All right. Now, so copy, so Control-C on your keyboard, or you can right-click and do your copy. You jump back into PowerChart, and we're going to add another one. I should probably, so we're going to add another auto text. We'll create a new one. So same steps before. I probably should put in, oopsie. So we come back into this window, and then you can just, and let's hope this works. There is some playing. We do recommend that you do this with the project. So if you want to set something up like this, you're better off asking one of us, because there are some tricks in the way to do it in order to make it pull through. So if you're trying this yourself, which is fine, and it's not pulling across properly, contact one of us and we'll come out and give you a hand. But that will be close, obviously, when we get to go live. Let's just double check this works. We also avoid using colours and things. There are actually business rules, and that will probably be defined for Logan and Beaudesert as well, where we avoid colours. There's things that, you You don't want big font, little font. There's actually a style guide for auto text as well, just so it's all consistent. Now, I'm hoping this works. Now I've talked it up. Let's close this out. Sorry, my mouse is a little bit so close. Dun, 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 dun. Damn it. Anyway, this is one of those things, so I'll contact our project team, no jokes. So normally that would bring, you get the idea though, it's going to bring in a table. Anything, as I said, tables are probably the max you can do, and as you can see, even when you do that, it gets a little bit, there's a certain way you've got to do it in the right steps in order for it to pull through, which obviously I didn't do. But that's why we say headings, you know, bold and underline are fine, but as soon as you start trying to get it too nifty, it doesn't convert it properly into the system.
And can you type into that blank cell?
So yes, you can, but it's not as easy as what you would have done if you're in Word. So it's not going to treat it like a table in here, if that makes sense. So it is a little bit trickier and clunkier to make sure you're writing in the right cell, which is why we say you're probably better off if you can avoid doing tables and anything like that. You're probably better off. But normally we've got a crack team of techie guys that can normally try and work out some way to make that work for you if you really, really need that auto text. Any questions around auto text? I feel like it was really anticlimactic because it didn't pull through properly. I was really excited about that, so alright, let's move on. Was there anything? Oh yeah, right, power forms. Let's talk power forms. Everyone know what a power form is? Everyone hearing that term for the first time? So power forms, so some of the clinical forms that you have, we've converted into power forms. Okay, they have to go through a whole statewide governing process, but there are a few in the system that your areas may use. Allied Health have a fair few functional ones. Our pre-admission clinics have some assessments and telephone calls. Nurses, you have all your admission forms. They're converted into power forms. So they all live in ad hoc. Nursing-wise, though, most of them are a task, so you probably see them come up with your admission task, so that's all, but they actually live in ad hoc. So if you come into here and you go all items, there are a lot of folders there based on all the different areas. However, some of them don't have anything in them because they don't use power forms there. They're there, though, just in case we do eventually. The idea would be, where possible, we'd create more power forms, because there are a lot of forms. You know, you go around your outpatient clinics and they have all these weird and wonderful forms with radio dials and check boxes that they use. So some of those, the idea would be to optimise them to get them their power forms, because like we've seen, auto text isn't going to cut it. So there's a little bit of work being done in this space.
Do they put forward?
What do you mean?
Like, say you've got a power form for admission for outpatients.
Yeah.
Coming in for surgery. They put the weight, height, and that. Does that?
Yes, yes. So the question was about whatever you populate into it, if there's another area in the chart, will it pull through? And the answer is yes. So vital signs will pull through, heights will pull through, all those things that there's a codified field in the chart will pull through to where it needs to go. Yeah. So let's just open up. I love my pack friend, so let's open up the pack form just so you can have a look. Let's do the phone. And this is essentially what they look like. So this is where we've kind of converted what the paper form looks like into an electronic version almost. So a lot of them will have tabs down the side, and the idea is that you work your way through them. So anything I enter here will pull through to wherever else it needs to go.
What do you find is the main advantage of using this over a template?
The advantage of this is that it pulls it to where it needs to go. It's all that populated. So because they're codified, it will take it to where it needs to go. And for example, your alerts, see how it's got that page that is very much the chart where you enter alerts and allergies. So if you enter it here, it's in the whole chart. Whereas auto text is all free text. It's not codified. It's not going. It's just, it is what it is, if that makes sense.
And from research perspective, this is easier to
Pull information, yes. You can really only pull reports and things off codified data. So but that's why we say in pretty much everything, you've touched on a really good point, that wherever in the chart there's a section to document it, we encourage you document it there rather than free texting, because it doesn't pull, it doesn't help out other clinicians, you can't run reports off it, it's just, you know, a bit of text. Yeah, good question. And even to the fact that for the Mars release, we actually added in even medication into the pack form. So it's the same, so it's exactly the same functionality as if I was outside of the power form. Does that make sense? I explained that really badly. So if I was to add a home med from here, it would be the same as me adding the home med from the actual chart. It all looks the same, so it's consistent, and it's going to go exactly to where it needs to do. So power forms, they are getting better. They were very clunky when we first started, I'm not going to lie, and they've come a long way. We keep adding things in so to save that double documentation. So when you sign this off, so let's do one now. We've already been made a liar of today, so let's just hope Mock plays my game. So we're going to go ahead and add this home med. So you can see it's like the, actually this doesn't look like this in real, because otherwise that kind of doesn't really help. The button's all the way over there, but I can confirm. Yeah, so your allergies and alerts are the same in the system as what Dave's saying, so you can still do the same thing. And it just helps if you're doing an assessment, particularly, for example, your PAC assessment, rather than having to get out of the form to go enter the allergies and alerts in another area of the chart or the home meds, we've tried to bring it all into the one place so you don't have to keep exiting, because you can't, remember in week 1 I showed you tear off functionality, how you can make 2 split screens? You can't do that from a power form. So once you're in there to document, and then you have to save it, get out of it, go document somewhere else, and then if you want to come back in, you've got to modify it and reopen. So we've tried to build as much interactive functionality so it talks to where it needs to, which is actually surprisingly difficult to do, in order so it just saves people time. So if we sign that off, so what did I add? I added a metoprolol, didn't I? So let's go and refresh. So this is where you'd actually document your home meds, and you'll notice, surprise, it looks exactly the same. So we've incorporated that into the power form, and there's your metoprolol. So it just makes those power forms, it works with their assessments and their usual flow. Now, if you wanted to see where those forms lived, so someone's done a form, a couple of things you can do. The forms all live, power forms all live in forms, surprising. Surprise, surprise. They'll tell you whether they're in the middle of or whether they're in progress. If I wanted to modify one, it's just a right click. If you're in doubt ever in the chart, refresh and right click. You're pretty much going to be okay. They're like the biggest things in the chart. So you can modify it, unchart it. If I modify it, it's going to reopen that form. The other thing is that it converts that form into a textual rendition. So it converts that form into a progress note, which is probably the most handy thing. So, and this leads on nicely into continuous doc. Man, where does the time go? I've only got 4 minutes left. I'll try and be quick. So it converts it. So this is it here. So what it does is it automatically converts that power form into a text. So just in case someone happens to be honest, not many people are looking in forms. Most of them will come to the chart, like, the progress notes. So it converts it straight into the progress notes for you to find. The other place, so continuous doc, for everyone who doesn't know, it's just another way to view your documentation, but it's more in chronological order of when it's been documented. So it's very similar to like flicking through your notes and seeing like who wrote, sometimes you like to know the order. That will automatically put it into that order for you. The other cool thing about continuous doc is you can use that search function. So if I go, oh, well, that patient had chest pain, but I can't be bothered to scroll through all these notes, it will search the notes and it will find the notes that have that in it. So it will do the keyword search as well, which is quite helpful. Annoyingly, it doesn't search the title. So your reason team role, which would be nice, it doesn't search that. So it will only search the content within the document. Don't get me started. It's just the way it is. It's a sore point. Okay, let's move on before I really get into it. The other thing is you can document. You can put filters on this. So if you only want to see by encounter, or if you want to see greater than certain time frames, if I know they wrote it like yesterday at this time, and there's lots of notes in there, you can start filtering it out. It's like most things in the chart. Clinical notes view, which is one of the most important things, and I didn't even get enough time to talk about it. Clinical notes view is where all your scanned documentation is going to come to. Okay, all the other documents also get filed into here. This is where your order of filing comes important. So if you're like, oh, that scanned document, that's, we couldn't get it digitally and we're still using a paper form for that. Or a great example of this is your ARPs. So ARPs get scanned into the chart. When the patient comes in, we'll print them off so they're active for that admission. So that's a great example. And you might be like, well, where do I find that? So order of filing, and you have an electronic system. So you guys are quite lucky already, whereas at previous sites, PA, one of our most recent ones, really difficult to get them to understand the order of filing and that things have to go in certain files, where I'm sure a lot of this is quite familiar to you. So I did put In your toolbox talk, I have put some guiding principles around the order of filing, so where you can generally expect to find it. It's not everything by any means, and I've only put the ones that, because that is subject to change, but they're the ones that are really unlikely to change, where you can expect to find. So your ARPs, for example, I've put that they always show in alerts and adverse reactions, and your assessment forms, so your power forms, where will they show? So you've got here, see, you've got your power form textual rendition as well, that'll sit in there. Your water lows or anything else, actually that's live water lows or electronic. Referrals, always a big one. Everyone wants to know where the referrals are kept. So I've put that in there, referrals and correspondence, it lives in there. Investigations, anaesthetic reports, where do they all live? Where do they pull through to? So I've given you a little bit of information there, but essentially this is where everything lives. If you're in an acute setting and you're in the ward setting, it's not as easy to use this. I'd be definitely recommending continuous doc, because everything is really in that order of the patient's care. But if you're in the clinics and things, this is probably what you'll use. And the biggest thing I need to stress with here, and it's probably, I think I've put it on your toolbox, is it's only going to show you, which doesn't mean as much for you guys, but it's only going to show you the last 6 months of documentation. Well, it may mean a lot if you've got a patient coming from PA and you're like, I know they got seen at the PA or, you know, CANS or something, and I can't see their notes, and I know that they got seen, you know, 7 months ago. Why can't I see it? It only shows 6 months. This caught us out heaps. It still catches us out. People don't know that you need to change that date range. It defaults to 6 months. So if you right click on the banner bar on that grey bar, and this is the same with most notes, whenever you see this grey bar, you can change the time criteria if you need to by right clicking. You go change search criteria, and then you can change it further back to however long you want, and then it's going to find that information. Okay? So you probably, particularly if you work in the clinics, you probably will come across that. Your renal patients, all those ones where they have long chronic histories, you're going to need to know that 6 months.
Continuous doc does include scanned documentation as well.
It does. It will pull through scanned documentation as well. It's not as pretty, and it's probably because your scan documentation tends to happen at the end of, you scan everyone's documentation when they get discharged. So you may not have, if you're going, something got, you know, scanned, maybe it hasn't reached the chart yet. So, you know, clinical notes view is probably where you want to go. But yeah, like I said, happens at the end. Yes, that's a good point, actually, if you're looking for documents. Clinical Notes View also has a lot of filters that you can do as well. So if you know who performed it, you could also filter it out that way. But yeah, you guys use Eric, you know what it's like when the order of filing, there's so much in there. So it's just about the quickest way to find the information that you need. Or if you've got a clinic and you're wondering where all your forms, and maybe there's a few forms that are staying on paper and you want to know where they're going to be filed to, let me know and I can see if one of the team can help you out, just so you know where they're likely to be going. Because you do just want to know quickest time. Alright, I'm done. You've all got toolbox talks, there are practice activities. You will hear from me for logins, hopefully, this week. Any other questions, feel free to email. That's it, really. Oh, yeah. Thank you, everyone. Yes.